Hi everybody, Lewis Smith here, back for another MMA UK live stream. Tonight we're going to be doing just a couple of chats about the UFC event that's coming up. It's going to be tomorrow night, and that's UFC 215 in Edmonton, Canada. So yeah, we've actually got a lot to talk about with this one. I'm going to be joined by my good friend Jim Graham in just a moment, and we're going to talk about a couple of other fights. So yeah, as always guys, leave your comments down below. Let us know what you think about the fights. Let us know if there's anything you think we should talk about, and yeah, we'll interact with you in the comments. And yeah, as well as this, guys, I should say, make sure to follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram as well. The handle is @WeAreMMAUK. That's all lowercase, all one word. So give us a follow. And also, I should say, with regards to this card, UFC 215, we're also going to have the the recap show, which is probably going to be on Monday. That's going to be done by James and Steve, so give those guys a watch on Monday as well if you're free, and they're going to be letting us know exactly what happened with the fights that's going on tomorrow night. So yeah, as soon as my buddy Jim Graham comes in here, we'll get into the fights. Here we go. Jim!
Hey, how's it going, Lewis?
How are you, buddy? Nice to see you. What's happening?
Oh, nothing much. We're actually having a nice day here in Detroit, so enjoying the way I can. I think the high was 56 yesterday, Fahrenheit,
Really?
and now we're at 75. So big change. Enjoying the weather.
Yeah. So I'm calling you from Wales, and it is raining. So pretty standard for us, but
Right.
yeah, we're not used to that kind of weather, to be honest. But yeah, obviously, guys, as I said before, make sure you leave your comments in the comment section below. Let us know what you think of the fights. Let us know what you think we should talk about. But yeah, Jim, a lot to talk about with this card. I think obviously the first big thing was that Demetrius Johnson and Ray Borg has been called off, taken from the headlining slot. Ray Borg was obviously pulled out due to illness, they said. How does this affect the card, do you think? What's your thoughts on that?
I think this is a pretty big deal. Now, most people think, oh, well, Mighty Mouse isn't a big draw or anything like that. But when you consider maybe Amanda Nunes isn't that big of a draw either, now that being the headline fight, I think is a big deal. I don't think it's going to affect the live gate that much. In the official statement from the UFC, they said fans can get a refund. But if I'm living in the Alberta area in Canada, events don't come there that often. So I got to imagine if you're a fan of MMA and UFC, you're going to be still going to that event. So I don't think it's going to affect the live gate that much. And Canada as a whole usually does well in terms of attendance and live gate numbers for UFC events. So I don't see it affecting there, but it's definitely going to affect the pay-per-view numbers. I mean, it has to. There's no way it can't.
Yeah.
You also couple in earlier, what was it, like a couple of weeks ago when the Ngannou and JDS fight dropped too. So this is now two huge fights, obviously with one being the main event, that have now dropped. So I have to imagine pay-per-view sales are going to be down, and they probably weren't looking that good already just because of the two big fights. But now you drop out this one, it can't be good for that.
I'm very disappointed if you're a fan as well, I think, is the main thing, isn't it? Obviously, you expect to see two title fights. As you said, neither of the two fights were huge draws, but when you put two together, I think it makes a pretty decent show. But obviously now with just the one, I think it's quite disappointing for the fans. With obviously Junior Dos Anjos dropping out as well. Yeah, I think it is very disappointing for the fans. But they are also. What do you think? I mean, for DJ now, how do you think he's going to be feeling after this? Obviously, he was going to be going on to make his hopefully attempt to break Anderson Silva's record for defending the title. How do you think his mindset will be after this news?
I'm sure he's going to be very disappointed, but he's pulled out of fights too. If you remember UFC 201, he actually had to pull out in what was at that time going to be against Wilson Hayes. So it's not like he hasn't done it either. Now, while he's going to be disappointed, I think the biggest thing he's going to be disappointed is the fact that now that Borg's hurt, you could see the UFC trying to throw in somebody else in there other than Ray Borg. And that could, of course, this whole thing started with the disagreement of him not wanting to fight TJ Dillashaw. So with Ray Borg out, this could cause more problems for Mighty Mouse. I mean, he obviously went as so far as to say, hey, get rid of the whole division. I don't care. So that conversation could come back up because of this. Now, I heard some rumors. I don't know if this is true. This is just rumors, not fact, that this may get moved to UFC 216. I don't know if that's going to happen. If so, it may not delay a lot. But if Ray Borg's going to be out for a significant amount of time, that discussion is going to come right back up.
I think it would make sense. 216 is in New York, isn't it, with Bisping GSP? Am I correct in saying that?
Oh, no, that's 217. 216 is going to be October in Vegas. That's, I think, the Kevin Lee and Tony Ferguson card.
Okay. So I think it would make sense to go on either one of those cards, really. I think you could bolster both of those cards. But, I mean, I don't know if it was just rumors I heard, but something I'd heard was that possibly Ray Borg was suffering for the weight cut again because he missed weight for his last fight. Do you think that could be a possibility, in fact?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's listed in the official statement. It says viral illness, but again, that could mean anything. That could be a whole host of things, from the cold to the flu, to maybe upset stomach, or like you said, weight cutting issues is probably more likely what it is. Viral illness sounds more serious than saying he wasn't cutting weight well. It's definitely a concern because he has missed weight several times so far in the UFC. Probably the biggest one as far as like him moving forward was the win over Louis Smolka, where he did miss weight, but he won that fight. And that was a big deal. I know I don't think he missed weight for the Formiga one, but I know that was a tough weight cut for him too. Mm-hmm. So this is definitely something that I think is a very likely possibility. I put it like probably 80% chance it probably was a weight cut issue.
Yeah. So moving on then to the card that what we're actually going forward with. Start at the top of the gate. Main event: Amanda Nunes versus Valentina Shevchenko. What's your thoughts on this fight?
Really, what fans have to look out for, I think, is two things. One, you have to look out for the conditioning of Amanda Nunes. She is not known as a girl that is going long distances in a fight. She hits very hard, she's very strong, and she can be in your face from the start. But we're looking at 5-10 minutes max of that for her really being super dangerous. Mm-hmm. I don't see her being able to sustain her pace for 25 minutes. Nothing has shown me so far in her career that she can do that sort of thing, whether from a striking or grappling or a mix of the two attacks. I don't see her doing that. Valentina Shevchenko has gone 5 rounds on multiple occasions and isn't an overly big bantamweight. I bet she could probably make 125. The biggest thing for her is the distance control. If you watched her fight against Holly Holm, it is fantastic, especially for a girl that is so much shorter than other girls in this division. The fact that she can control the range so well, I don't know if I've ever seen, like I said, a shorter fighter be able to dictate the range of a fight like Shevchenko. And this is male or female. It's absolutely fantastic. And that's going to be the big key, because if she can dictate the range and the pace, Nunes can throw all she wants, as hard as she wants. She's not going to be able to hit Shevchenko. And Shevchenko has proven that she can get in and out like anybody. Mm-hmm. Coming to the ground, I say it's pretty even. Amanda Nunes is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. I don't think Shevchenko's a black belt, but, I mean, she did submit Juliana Pena.
Exactly.
And an amazing armbar. So, grappling-wise, I would say, actually, they're pretty even. The big battle, Lewis, like I said, is going to be the striking to see whether or not Nunes can actually connect against Shevchenko. Is going to be the big deal to watch in the main event.
I think if you look at the last fight as well, she started off basically, like you said, she started off very strong. But as it was getting further into the fight, she seemed to tire, and Shevchenko seemed to get stronger. So obviously, being this one is a title fight for the women's bantamweight title, it's going to be 5 rounds. That could play a big factor, I think.
Oh, absolutely. The 5 rounds is going to be huge. And also, I think there's a lot of pressure on Amanda Nunes because she pulled out of their last fight in July. Yeah. I think there's a lot of pressure for her to perform. And because of that, she may go out maybe even more in a rush or in a hurry to get this fight done quick to show that she is the baddest woman on the planet. And somebody like Shevchenko, who's an amazing counter puncher, that could play right into her game for a girl that may be pressing a lot because she feels that pressure, not only from herself, from fans, but obviously the front brass with Dana White for the fact that she did pull out of that last fight.
I think, as well, I think that could give a mental advantage to Shevchenko, knowing that she wasn't there for the last time. She dropped out, I think, on the day of the fight, wasn't it? This was another mystery illness, same as kind of the Ray Borg situation. So, again, I think that's going to give a mental advantage to Shevchenko going into this fight.
Yeah, I would say Shevchenko is a very mentally strong individual. I mean, she has fought nothing but top ladies since coming to the UFC. I mean, her debut was against Sarah McMahon.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not Sarah McMahon,
no.
Sarah Kaufman. Got the wrong Sarah. Still, either way, that's a tough fight. But
both good fighters.
Debuts against Sarah Kaufman, the former Strikeforce champion, and then just keeps on fighting. Then fights Holly Holm. Obviously, Juliana Pena has the first fight with Amanda Nunes, and has been really, other than that very close loss to Nunes, has been nothing but fantastic so far in this division. Obviously holds that win, I believe, in Muay Thai over Joanna Jacek. And I know that's not MMA, but that's a nice feather to have as well. So she's fantastic, and she's really grown on me as a fighter. She's technically very sound, and it's funny because Money Mouse is obviously a very technically sound individual. So this would have been with both of them, that would have been a great night for fighters that are just super sound at what they do. Yeah,
of course. So yeah, that's that fight. That's the title fight. Now the main event. Next fight down the card obviously is going to be Neil Magny versus Rafael dos Anjos. Another actually really, really good fight. I think it's going to be a very close fight. Both off good wins. I think Dos Anjos just beat Tarek Safadine in his last match, I believe. And also Neil Magny got a good victory over Johnny Hendricks, close decision. So that's going to be another competitive matchup. How do you see that one going down?
The big thing in this fight is going to be the size difference. Obviously, Dos Anjos, formerly the 155 champion, he's only 5'9". Neil Magny is 6'2". That's a huge difference in size, and I'm pretty sure Neil Magny walks around close to 200 pounds. I mean, we're talking about one of the biggest welterweights ever in UFC history, and he's taking on Dos Anjos, who is solid for this weight class. He's not as small as I thought he was, like really kind of coming up. I thought, looking him against Safadine, I didn't think he was that much smaller than Safadine. But Safadine, you could say, is a smaller welterweight. We're talking about a big end on the spectrum, and we're all talking about a guy that also is a pretty solid grappler in his own right. And I would say that's really Dos Anjos' advantage. He's a decent striker, but I think moving up to 170, I don't really see him as a knockout guy. He wasn't really a knockout guy at 55, but he did have some power. He had flashes of it. Obviously, the Ben Henderson fight and the Donald Cerrone fight, he really looked, with those spectacular knockouts. But against Neil Magny, I think it's going to be tough for him to get inside, not only for takedowns, but for power punches. And Neil Magny, for being a guy that big, has amazing conditioning. The dude has gone 25 minutes, I think a couple times he's main evented. So conditioning, you would say, the smaller guy moving up. But I think Neil Magny, even being a bigger guy, probably has the better conditioning. Yeah. It's really just going to be whether or not Dos Anjos can have any success getting inside. Because if he can, it makes it a little more of a 50-50 matchup. But if he stays on the outside, I don't see how he can stop Neil Magny from doing what he likes to do, and that's throw a lot of different striking combinations very often.
Do you like Dos Anjos at welterweight, or would you prefer to see him back at lightweight?
I would prefer to see him at lightweight, honestly, because if you look at his fight against Tony Ferguson, did he lose? Yes. But was it competitive? Was he still close? Was he in that fight? Absolutely. Let's not forget that fight's at 8,000 feet elevation. That's the most difficult place to do. Yeah, and I think it was in Mexico City. So that's like the most difficult place in the world to like do a sporting event. So, I mean, let's take that into consideration as well. Now, I think moving up, he just didn't want to cut weight anymore. And he is an older guy. He's been fighting in the UFC for a very long time. I think he can beat some guys, but I don't see him getting to that championship level like he was at 155. And I still think he would be a force at 155 as well. I don't think he's that far down the totem pole there, even with the loss to Tony Ferguson.
So I'm just looking at the questions now. I've got a question from James Anthony, and he's saying, who would win a fight between Lewis and Jim? James, I'm going to say Jim for that one. I know he's been doing a couple of jiu-jitsu lessons at the moment.
Yeah, I got class later today, actually, with Ronaldo Candido, who was on The Ultimate Fighter not too long ago. So pretty excited. It'll be my first day with him as the instructor.
Excellent. So, James, I'm going to go with Jim for that one. Obviously now he's learning from the best, so I'll go with Jim for that one. See if we got any other questions a second.
Got a lot of people saying hi.
Yeah. Tony Nicole Reyes, aloha to you as well. But yeah, next fight then, Jim. Looking further down the card then, we've got Ilia Latifi against Tyson Pedro. What do you make of that matchup?
We got some heavy hitters. We got some very heavy hitters. Tyson Pedro, since debuting in the UFC, has really showed a tremendous amount of power. I think he's only like 22 years old. He's a very young guy. He showed a lot of poise so far, and he's still undefeated at 6-0. He's definitely a bright star for the UFC, especially in the division at 205, which is sorely lacking talent right now. Either of these guys are really ripe to shoot up the rankings. I mean, I know it's 10 versus 13, but they're looking for new contenders. They need new talent, regardless of John Jones returning or not. They need more contenders, regardless of who's at top. And these two guys can fit the bill. Obviously, Latifi's a guy that trains with Alexander Gustafsson, so he knows what it takes to get to the top of the hill. And really, for him, I think that his wrestling is going to be the big deal, because I think if he ties Tyson up, wear him out, make him, work at the arms with the underhook, that's going to negate his power later on in the fight. That's going to be the big deal. But if Latifi's trying to go there and throw bombs, I don't like that strategy. That's not the strategy you really want to play a guy like Pedro. So I would expect Latifi to try to work in close, head to his chest, grind him up against that cage, and really try to outwork Tyson Pedro. Because if this thing's at distance, it definitely is going to favor a much bigger and taller guy in Tyson Pedro.
And Latifi coming off quite a big knockout. I think Bader was his last fight. He lost to that really bad knee, didn't he? Do you think that will mentally affect him going into this, knowing that he's been knocked out?
I think a little bit, but that fight was competitive. I mean, it wasn't like Bader was whipping him or anything. That knee was a very uncharacteristic Ryan Bader thing. If you watch a lot of Ryan Bader fights, that's not something he's a guy that throws a lot of overhand rights, uses that to get in and get the takedown. That's typically Bader's MO. So him throwing kind of a flying knee was definitely uncharacteristic. So I wouldn't hold my head too far down if I'm Latifi, because at the end of the day, Ryan Bader still is a top 10 light heavyweight. It's not a bad loss, but it's not a bad loss by any means. And this is a fight still against the top 15 guy, but this is a nice guy who I think has some momentum. He has some hype behind him because of the knockout. And I think with the guys that he trains with, you also throw in Jimmy Manuel in there as well. I already mentioned Gustafsson. Yeah, I think he'll be prepared. He seems like a pretty mentally strong guy. I mean, let's not forget, he did take on less than a week's notice Gegard Mousasi to fill in for Gustafsson. So this is a guy that's always ready to fight. So I think mentally he'll be just fine.
Yeah, so that could be a great fight, I think. So I'm actually looking forward to that one. The next fight is, to be honest, my favorite fight on the card is the next one, and that is Jeremy Stephens versus Gilbert Melendez. I think out of all the fights, that's my pick for fight of the night. Really looking forward to seeing that. I don't know if I'm correct. Is it Melendez going down to 145 for this one?
Yes, this I believe will be his debut in featherweight. He kind of hinted at this upon his return from suspension, but he took that fight against Edson Barboza, and I could tell from that fight he had lost a step. I think most would agree he didn't quite seem the El Nino we remember from being the former Strikeforce champion. So moving down to 45, yes, he's going to be a bigger guy. Luckily, he's taking on a guy that is not a fast featherweight. We're taking on a guy that is a powerful featherweight. I mean, Jeremy Stephens was already one of the heaviest hitters at 155. So moving down to 45, he's still tremendously strong. Really, I think for Gilbert, he's going to have to use his grappling skills, and that's really Jeremy Stephens' biggest weakness. He has solid takedown defense, but once he gets on his back, I would really favor Melendez. Obviously, training with the Scrap Pack. We're talking about the Diaz brothers. We're talking about Jake Shields. He's very well versed in submissions, and I think that's a huge advantage for Gilbert Melendez when this comes to the ground. But with Melendez being a little bit older now, he might not be able to take those punches that much. Added with the new weight cut, those punches of Stephens may affect him a lot more than it would have maybe just even 2-3 years ago.
I think there's a lot of unknowns going into this one for both guys, really. Well, actually more for Melendez, but to be honest, I just like the matchmaking with this fight. I think obviously both guys are veterans in the sport. Both have been on a loss as well. I think Jeremy Stevens' last fight, he lost to Frankie Edgar. Obviously, Melendez lost his last fight as well. So I think, this is a fight that can... I think one guy's going to get propelled upwards from this, and one guy's going to start to go down. That's my view on this, and I think it's going to be a really good fight. So, this is my pick for fight of the night, and I'm actually really looking forward to this one.
Yeah, it's a very under-the-radar fight because Melendez is not as high profile as he was, obviously, like you said, coming off the suspension. Really has only fought the one time since coming back. And we actually had a question there saying, how do you feel about guys cutting to a new division? It's really a way to kind of reinvigorate your career and kind of get a fresh start, especially for a guy like Melendez. Basically, not that you throw his UFC record out the window, but when you start a new division, it's like he's 0-0. He's 0-0 again. He's looking to make a new, fresh name for himself. And because he is a bigger name and a former champion and a former UFC title challenger, he strings together, 1, 2, 3 victories. All of a sudden, he's fighting for the championship. That's typically how those things work. And he's a big enough name to throw up against, as of right now, at the top of the division, a Frankie Edgar or a Max Holloway. It really works out. And beating a guy who hasn't quite got to the top but is a solid veteran and very dangerous in Jeremy Stevens will go a long way.
I think, Melendez, he's got to be, 34, 35 now as well. So I would imagine he's probably his last run if he's going to do anything towards the title now in any division. But, yeah, I think it's a good move for him. I mean, like you said, it can go either way. I think the last time this happened, Pettis went down and ended up missing weight, didn't he, when he fought... he fought Max Holloway for the interim belt. So, I mean, it can go either way. Hopefully, Melendez can make the weight well. And, hopefully we'll have a great fight with this one.
The biggest difference, at least with Anthony Pettis, is at least Anthony Pettis is only 28, 29. Yeah. He's still in the prime. Moving back up, he can still kind of... He's still in the prime of his life. Melendez, he's towards the end of his career. If 45 doesn't work out, retirement. You know what I mean? It's one or the other. It's not like, I'll move back up to 55. It's like, 55 is even more dangerous now. And now you're a couple of years older after failing at 45. So this is really kind of Gilbert Melendez's last chance to try to get a UFC championship.
Yeah. Jim, I got to ask, because we've got another question. Just very briefly, James Anthony's asking, what were your thoughts on how Conor McGregor did against Mayweather?
I thought he did well. I mean, it was his 0-0 against 49-0, and he won 10 rounds. And he trained basically boxing for 2 months. You got to give the guy a lot of credit, I think, in that. Obviously, the strategy that plagued him against Nate Diaz, throwing a lot of big power shots early and fading down the stretch once again was kind of his Achilles heel. But Mayweather planned for that. He really did not quite a rope-a-dope, not quite. No. I'm not going to say quite that, but he definitely was saving himself for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He was definitely pacing himself and knows how to pace himself for an affair that goes 12 rounds, whereas Conor McGregor doesn't quite know how to do that. The thing is, because he's had such tremendous success early on in fights, 21 professional victories in mixed martial arts, 19 knockouts, if I'm not mistaken, you're getting out of there quick. You ain't got to worry about going 10, 15, 20 minutes. Yeah. So he's a guy that hasn't even had to worry about that. So when you start thinking, hey, I might go 36 minutes, that's insane. That's insane to think about when you've been knocking out guys in less than 2 minutes. So you got to say he did fairly well. If he takes on another 0-0 boxer, you got to imagine he could actually probably win when he's not taking on a guy who's who's 49-0.
One of the best of all time, arguably.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I would agree. I thought he did. I was watching it, and to be honest, he did much better than I expected. I thought he'd go all guns blazing for the first 3 rounds and then end up getting clipped with something. But, to get 10 rounds against Floyd Mayweather was just... I thought it was unreal. And I think he should be really proud of that achievement. I would have liked to have seen him gone the 12 rounds, but to be honest, I think with regards to the stoppage, I don't know if you agree, I thought it was a good stoppage. I thought it came at the right time to save him getting any unnecessary damage, really. What did you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's something where he could very easily box again if he wanted to. Do you
want to see the Malignaggi fight?
Huh?
Would you like to see him fight Malignaggi now?
Yeah, yeah, I could see it. Here's the thing. If he wants to box now, just do boxing, though. That's the thing. I don't want to see him going back and forth. And that's just holding up the UFC. and that's not really helping boxing just to organize like 1 or 2 super fights. So if he wants to box, I have no problem with that. Do what you want to do, man. It's your life. But I don't want to get in a game of cat and mouse where he comes back and in December, fights the title, and then has another big fight lined up for the summer, boxing against Paulie or Triple G or any of the other names or a rematch with Floyd, any else they've been throwing out there, and that's to me the issue is not so much would I want to see him boxing again. It's just choose what you want to do with your career, and if he feels there's more money in boxing, then hey, more power to him, man.
Yeah, guys, give us your thoughts on this fight below. Who do you want to see McGregor fight next? Do you want to see him back in the UFC? Or do you want to see him fight Paulie Malignaggi in a boxing match? Let us know what you think. Another quick question I want to ask you, I know it's to do with boxing, but quick pick from yourself, Canelo Alvarez or Triple G? Who have you got for that one coming up?
Oh, Triple G by far. I really do like Canelo. I mean, his performance over Chavez Jr. was domination. I mean, you don't get that level of boxing too often and see 12 wipeout rounds. I mean, you really can't give Chavez one round, and you don't really see that too much, regardless of the weight class. So I think Canelo's going to do better than I originally thought after seeing the Chavez fight. But Triple G, I think his power is going to be a big difference in this fight, and I think that might be the tipping point. I actually wouldn't be surprised if Triple G knocks him out.
So you're going to go for a Triple G win. I'm going to go for a Canelo win for that one. I don't know why. I just got a feeling. So I'm going to go for Canelo for that one. But anyway, back to MMA, back to the UFC tomorrow night. One fight I want to talk about. I know we said we'd say what fights we want to speak about from the undercard. Something I was looking forward to was the Henry Cejudo fight. Henry Cejudo, of course, is going to be fighting Wilson Reyes on the undercard tomorrow. What's your thoughts on that?
Actually, that just got moved up to the main card. That's going to be the 5th main card fight.
Right, because so instead of having 4, now they're going to have 5 on the main card.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a fantastic fight. Obviously, we're going to see a guy who's a really good jiu-jitsu player against a guy who's an Olympic gold medalist wrestler. Yeah. However, when you see a lot of these grappling matchups, it ends up being a stand-up fight.
Yeah.
Now, we've seen Henry Cejudo, if you look at his last fight against Joseph Benavidez, look tremendously better standing up and throwing strikes against a guy who I would say is a really good striker in Joseph Benavidez. I thought he held himself really well. Of course, there was that issue with the point taken away and the illegal shot that probably cost him the fight. You also had that typically when coaches fight on The Ultimate Fighter, they're usually the main event. So the fact that was a 3-round instead of a 5-round fight, because of course they did the fight with Elliott against Johnson, as was what that season was building up. So unfortunately, I would have liked to see that be a 25-minute affair, because I think that could have put Cejudo winning instead of the.
How did you score that fight, by the way, Jim? How did you score that fight? The Henry Cejudo and I forgot. Henry Cejudo, his last fight he fought Benavidez, didn't he? How did you score that fight?
Boy, I think I had it a draw because of the point. I had it a draw against Benavidez. So I mean, it's unfortunate that that's what happened, but I mean, you got to roll with it. That's the sports. The referee made a judgment call, and right or wrong, that you got to do it. And it kind of sucks. Cejudo gets the loss on his record, but because the flyweight division's pretty shallow, he still remains to the top. I mean, he's lost 2 fights in a row. And he's still ranked the number 2 guy.
Yeah.
There are too many divisions you could do that in.
Yeah. I mean, if he wins that tomorrow, what do you see as next for Cejudo?
If he beats Wilson Hayes, which I think he has a very good chance to do, we're going to do our picks, so I don't want to give it away. Yeah, okay. I would imagine he puts himself in line for a title shot, because Money Mouse has already done a couple of rematches. Obviously, he's fought Benavidez twice. He's fought a couple other guys twice. And I think with his improvements in his stand-up game, I actually think it will be a lot more competitive this time around. Obviously, we already mentioned TJ Dillashaw's name. He's the wrench in the wheel, and whether or not this Ragbor fight ends up happening, at 216 instead of 215. And also, you got to throw in Sergio Pettis' name there as well. If he doesn't get Mighty Mouse, I think he should get Sergio Pettis.
I would agree with that. I think that would be a great fight, actually. But I suppose Sergio Pettis might be shouting for a title next, though. he had a great win last time out, so he's got a shout to say, maybe I should fight for the title next. Do you think?
He does. He has a case, but I would like to see him get one more. The biggest knock I have against Sergio, I am a fan of his, is he hasn't finished anybody in any of his UFC wins. I think because if you're going to beat Mighty Mouse, you're going to have to put him away.
Yeah.
I don't see if anyone's beating Mighty Mouse, it's not by decision. So I'd like to see Sergio get a finish. I don't care who it's against. Give him the worst guy in the UFC. He needs to get a finish for me. I really would like to see that before he gets a title shot. That's, to me, the biggest knock against him right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's not a bad point, actually. I mean, he's very young as well, he's Sergio. What is he, 24, something like that, 25?
Yes, he's really young,
young.
and he started, I believe, in the UFC when he was like 19, 20. So
plenty of time to go for him. Still a lot of time to develop and a lot of time to go for that title, I suppose. So no rush.
Absolutely.
So on to the picks then, Jim, if you're ready.
Yes.
You ready to make your picks? Start off. We'll work our way back up the card now then. So Henry Cejudo v. Wilson Hayes. Who have you got for that one?
I'm going with Henry Cejudo. I really like his striking. I think it's better than Wilson Hayes, and even though Hayes is probably a little better at submission, I see if he tries like a Damian Maia type plan where he tries to take down a strong wrestler. I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about arguably the best wrestler ever in the UFC. I mean, you can really make that case. So I'm going to go with Henry Cejudo in this one.
Yeah, I think I would agree. I think your assessment with the wrestling, I think like you said, wrestlers and grapplers, they very often nullify each other, and then it's a striking war. I think Henry Cejudo's striking looked really good against Benavidez, and I think he's going to get the job done tomorrow. So I'm going to agree with you for that one. Both going Henry Cejudo. Next one then, Jeremy Stephens versus Gilbert Melendez. How do you see this one going?
I'm going to go with Jeremy Stephens. He's used to this weight cut at 145. Melendez's first time, a guy that has already kind of looked like a guy who's on the downside of his career. I think Jeremy Stephens is crazy because he's been around for so long. Everyone thinks he's like this really super old guy, but he's like 30. You know what I mean? Like he really started at a young age, so he feels a lot older than he is. Still has a lot left in the tank, and I think his power when it connects with Melendez at this weight, I think is going to be a huge factor. That's why I'm going with Lil Heathen in this one.
Again, I'm going to agree with you. I think Jeremy Stephens, he's used to making that weight cut. I think it's going to be more of a problem for Gilbert Melendez than he realizes, and I think it could be a knockout for Jeremy Stephens tomorrow night. So we're both going to agree again. Both going to agree again. Both going for Jeremy Stephens. Ilia Latifi versus Tyson Pedro. Who have you got for that one?
Going with Latifi, I think his wrestling and just overall grinding style, I think is going to be a lot for Pedro to handle. Now, yeah, he has that one-punch power, don't get me wrong, but I think Latifi's going to be able to tie him up enough in this 15 minutes to get a decision or maybe a very late, knockout, more from like exhaustion and a lot of punches than him throwing some sort of haymaker or something. For
this one, I'm going to go for Pedro. I've just got a feeling he's going to land a bomb early on, and I think that's going to be the fight over. I don't know why I think he's a huge hitter. I just see him getting it done tomorrow. I've got a feeling for Pedro tomorrow, so I'm going to go for Tyson Pedro. Obviously, then the next one, Neil Magny versus Rafael dos Anjos. How do you see this one going?
Going with Neil Magny. I'm not going to put a whole lot of technical on this pick. I talked about it. He's just a bigger dude. And
yeah.
Especially when you start getting up in the higher weight classes, size matters a lot. Dos Anjos does have a lot of skill, but I feel like anything Dos Anjos throws, Neil Magny. I mean, we're talking about a guy who took how much punishment from Hector Lombard, and Dos Anjos throws nowhere near as hard as Hector Lombard. So I really look at that as a guy who can take some punishment as well. So I'm going with Neil Magny in this one.
Yeah, I think Neil Magny as well. I mean, I think the two fights that stand out for me leading up to this one is when Neil Magny defeated Kelvin Gastelum, and also when he defeated Johnny Hendricks, both really strong wrestlers with a really strong top game. Magny was able to weather that storm and get the victories, but I just don't see, with the size difference, that Dos Anjos will be able to put that same sort of pressure that those two other fighters could put on him. So I think he's going to be able to take his shots. I think he's going to be able to stop the takedowns. And I think it could be a dominant performance for Neil Magny tomorrow. So yeah, both of us going for Neil Magny for that one. And then the main event, Title fight, Women's Bantamweight Championship, Amanda Nunes versus Valentina Shevchenko. Who's going away with the championship belt tomorrow, Jim?
When this rematch was first announced in July, I picked Amanda Nunes. I thought she was prime for a great performance. But now, I think it's 2 months later, if I'm not mistaken, I think this just favors Valentina Shevchenko. I think that she has, like I said, she's really grown on me as a fighter. She's super technically sound. I mean, she took about the best Nunes could throw at her in a 15-minute fight. A 25-minute fight favors her a heck of a lot more. And we're going to see the first ever UFC champion from Kyrgyzstan, I guess. And she also does some training in Peru as well. She usually comes out with the Peruvian flag as well.
Yeah.
So pretty big deal there. And so I'm going to go with her to win this one.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go for Valentina Shevchenko. I think after the last fight, the pull-out, to me, I think she's got a mental advantage. And I also think with a 5-round fight, I think Nunes has got problems with her cardio. And going into the later rounds, I see Shevchenko possibly getting a submission. I think if Amanda Nunes gets tired and takes her down, I think she's really kind of explosive off her back, as we saw with the submission in her last fight. So I think she could get another submission in this fight, or possibly a KO. But yeah, I definitely see this belt going to a new champion. I think it's going to be Valentina Shevchenko. So yeah, that's it done now. So we got all the picks in. Jim, thank you very much.
Yeah, I wanted to mention real quick on the undercard. I wanted to say the fight I'm looking forward to real quick is probably the Gavin Tucker-Rick Glenn fight. Okay. Rick Glenn is the former World Series of Fighting champion at featherweight. He's actually, for this fight, moving back down to featherweight. He made his debut on short notice up a weight class against Evan Dunham. Even though he lost, he showed fantastic heart in that fight. So I'm looking forward to seeing him at his natural weight class. And then we look at Gavin Tucker, a guy that really shined in his debut against Sam Sicilia in his home province there in Canada, in Nova Scotia. So obviously being the home country guy there, I know Nova Scotia is really far from Edmonton, but he's still from Canada, a lot closer than where Rick Glenn's from there in Iowa. So the crowd's going to be behind him, and this is a really chance to prove himself as the next big thing in the featherweight division. So I'm really looking forward to seeing Gavin Tucker perform again. Yeah,
should be a good one. And Jim, where can people find you on social media? Instagram, Twitter? What's your handles?
Yeah, absolutely. Twitter's just my name, @JimGraham. Pretty much the same for Instagram, the Jim Graham. And Facebook is Beyond the Cage Podcast.
Brilliant. So yeah, guys, head over to Jim's pages, give him a follow, give him a like. And as well as this, guys, I was going to say we've got the recap show of this coming up on Monday. That's going to be done by Steve Brigg and James Hamilton. So that'll be another good show where they'll obviously talk about everything that we've just talked about, but obviously then they'll know the results. So tune into that one on Monday evening. I think that's going to be going down. And once again, Jim, thank you for joining me, buddy. Always a pleasure to speak to you.
No problem.
And I look forward to speaking to you soon, okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jim.
Yep.
Bye, buddy.